Yeah, the weather here, it's get sick weather. And I had to go shopping again because the cats keep eating their food for some reason. I wonder why. So ironically, I'm sick as a dog. I don't even know where that expression comes from. Why a dog? But that's not of great importance right now. I wanted to catch up on a few things from the genre department. As some may have noticed, I have mainly been going through world genres and various variations that can be put on world genres. I really hope that I'm going through clearly. My voice is. If I speak too loudly, I think I may throw up. Um, and I want to round off those world genres a bit before I go into plot genres. I've done a bit plot genre, but I'd like to go into it further. So, one thing that I'm pretty sure I missed was hard sci-fi. And hard sci-fi is kind of it's a weird one to me. Oh, bad taste. It's a bit weird because the fact that hard sci-fi seems to exist as a genre is quite an indignation of sci-fi in general. If hard sci-fi is a genre, then the default assumption is that everything else is soft sci-fi by default. And that means roughly the same as the whole hard and soft magic system or other hard and soft systems. No naughty jokes, please. Um, in that hard sci-fi goes into more detail with how technology works, but there's an added twist to hard sci-fi because technology is real. The technology in hard sci-fi may not be real. Typically, a lot of it is not real, but it is built on real, actual technology. The idea is that hard sci-fi, which by the way usually is set in a relatively near future because otherwise things get too speculative. The assumption is that hard sci-fi builds on what we know and what we expect to be true about technology. So it extrapolates from what we are currently doing, what we have in the most advanced technology and even experimental technology, even theoretical technology. Theoretical engineering is actually a pretty big field. All the kind of stuff that we think we can do, but we haven't really done yet for various reasons. That is what hard sci-fi um, mostly builds on, and it just speculates on how the future could realistically look. A future where if you think that okay, why isn't it like that now? Then that's a win for the author, the creator of that world, because hard sci-fi is supposed to be as realistic as possible without being the actual real world. And that sets it apart from any other hard system like hard magic or hard psionics. Yeah, I know I didn't go into that, but any kind of ability system or whatever you want to call it, power system, tool system can be hard or soft. It sets it apart from let's stick to hard and soft magic in that it is rooted in something. Even the hardest of hard magics is still made up from whole cloth. There is no magic, no real magic to build on. Hard sci-fi needs to build on something, which means that it cannot be, well, it usually cannot be quite as wild as a hard magic system can. Hard magic systems just need some kind of rules to go by. Hard sci fi needs to go by the rules that already exist in the world that we know today, which makes the the most, I'm not sure if it's the most prevalent, but the genre that I feel is the most developed type of hard sci-fi. Kind of interesting. For lack of a true official name, the genre has kind of been, something that smells like it's burning. I hope it's just my health going crazy. Um, that genre is transhumanism. Transhuman basically just means beyond humanity as we know it. And that is a very good way to describe the, at least the hard sci-fi aspects of transhumanism as a genre. There are the basics of going beyond human, which means going into space, and what happens when you go into space, how it affects the body, how it affects the mind, how it affects society, how humanity might. Um, just trying to smell if something's still burning. I think it was a fluke. It's how society might adapt to the pressures and the circumstances of living in space, and what it might build on realistically in human society today, which tends to mean a combination of um, nasty authoritarian regimes and pretty wild capitalism. It's not a given, it doesn't have to be like that, but that is the usual assumption. Um, and the technology of space travel is usually taking concepts that are hopeful theoretical engineering today, things that people would like to try and put into space, like space elevators, generation ships, magnetic slingshot or magnetic drive launches, and things like that, and make them commonplace. So it's not the whole anti-gravity and hyperdrive stuff. It's something based in what is being experimented with now. But that's just one aspect of going beyond human. The aspect that has become more prevalent in literature over these last 10 to 20 years is the fact that we're seeing how we may be able to change actual humans. Back in the 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s, maybe also, 80s were when it started to kind of change. But back then, the main non human advancements were considered to be robots that were entirely robotic, and some straight into the field of androids, um, which I think is actually just Greek for human-like, uh, but is assumed to be robots that look good enough to pass for human. Um, the movie Westworld, which had an amazing TV series built around it, but the original movie Westworld from the 70s was a very good example of this human like robots. But in the 80s, it started to change both, perhaps because of changes in literature and society in general, but also because we started to really see the technological possibilities we were facing with modern science, with the modern science of that era. And thoughts like, or ideas like a completely synthetic human being started showing up. Things like cyborgs, where human beings had machines built into them, started showing up. And genetic engineering started to become a big thing. And that kind of escalated the whole human is technology idea. And transhumanism often takes that to the extreme, where the boundaries between human and machine, or even not machine, human and artificial creation of any kind, starts to blur. And in many ways, it is a more, maybe not more positive, that's not the right way to put it, a less bleak version of cyberpunk. It's not hopelessly optimistic. That would be a disservice to call it that. It's still very critical of, or a lot of hard sci-fi is very critical of human behavior and the society is built around them. But it's not quite as dark as cyberpunk. It is more hopeful. It takes technology as an overall positive that just comes with a price and has its problems. But beyond that, the transhumanism genre is still young and a bit vague. It doesn't have as much story structure as, for example, cyberpunk. There are no archetypical heroes and villains of transhumanism like the rough street detective hero or anti-hero and the mighty corporate villains of cyberpunk. Stereotypes are not really developed in transhumanism, but that in itself makes it interesting because the world is the genre in many ways. It takes advancements of today, makes them more extreme, and then simply asks, how would things be in that world? And you can have any kind of story set in that world that you could have set in ours, but the technology changes it. If it's a murder mystery, is the dead person, is the victim truly dead when you can revive or copy brains or whatever? Is something truly lost if modern technology can bring it back? Fugitives that jump across the stars, are they worth even pursuing? Is it even practical? All the changes in technology starts asking both new questions and old questions in new ways. And that perhaps is a lot of the appeal of the genre. It doesn't stray too far away from what we know, it seems to be something that could be right around the corner. It seems very familiar, but it is still different enough to be interesting. And that is pretty much the essence of hard sci-fi. You can see, if you know, at least if you know a little bit about technology, and most fans of hard sci-fi, I believe, are also at least somewhat interested in technology. You can see the world today in what you are reading or watching, but you can also see that it is not the world of today. In a way, you get to have it both ways. You get to have a sci-fi genre without losing yourself in a sci-fi genre. It's a half and half in many ways, and I think that appeals to a lot of people who find sci-fi to be a bit too much. The hard sci-fi is still sci-fi, but it is still also our world in many ways, and that is worth remembering if you want to make um, anything that is set in a hard sci-fi genre.